Welcome back to the channel. Just as a quick note, as you can see, most of my viewers aren't already subscribed to the channel. If I could please ask you to hit that like button and subscribe, it will really help the channel grow, and it will keep you up to date with my latest content. Now, on with the video. Okay, the plot to this episode is fairly straightforward. A young guy visits his father who is in a coma. House, wanting to show off to Wilson, makes that young guy experience a horrible seizure, which turns out to be a lot more severe than House originally expected it to be. House decides he needs to talk to the young guy's father. Rather dangerously, and against general rules, House creates a concoction of drugs and temporarily wakes up the guy who is in a coma. Despite Cuddy's anger and objections, she is seriously shocked to see that the guy in the coma wakes up. Upon his awake, House bombards him with questions that he doesn't seem interested in answering. He decides he wants to live. He wants to spend his last day doing what he loves. There is this sandwich that he used to love in Atlantic City. He heads out in search of that sandwich and to gamble a bit. Before he leaves, he works out a deal with House that for every question House answers, he will answer one too. Wilson, who doesn't trust either of them to drive his car, decides he better come along as well. After a lot of deliberation in a hotel room, Gabe realises he does care for his son and that he messed up by not being there in time. He volunteers one of his vital organs, but Cuddy disagrees, believing it will kill a coma patient who shouldn't even be awake right now. He coincidentally overdoses on painkillers after Wilson leaves he and House in the room alone. It is heavily implied that House helps him die. But his son does survive. The subplot to this episode ties into the main arc for the season. A detective who has a vendetta against House meets with the team one-on-one and asks them questions about whether they have been prescribing House drugs. They all stick to the same story and protect House. The episode itself ends on a cliffhanger related to this subplot. In order to try to force Wilson into testifying against House, they freeze his bank account. The dialogue in this episode is great. The bickering between House and Wilson on their car journey is great. It's set up in a way that almost feels like Gabe, the coma guy, is the arbiter between the two, which is an interesting place for their characters to be. There is a serious debate between House and Wilson that is cleverly cut through House's aggressive questioning and answers with Gabe. The questions themselves start out fairly generic until Gabe asks a really interesting question.
You're a curious guy. You like to figure things out. Why not go into research? Why work with people when you obviously hate people?
I love House's response to this. It gives some much needed and interesting depth to House's character and seems to aid in Wilson's understanding of him better. From the spectator's point of view, I think the plot perfectly sums up a reveal like this and can naturally act as a character study as well. In terms of House's general character, I think this episode really tests him. It must have taken a lot for a character like him to answer Gabe's personal questions, but I think it needed the much darker ending that it got. We all know there are very few things House wouldn't do to get an answer, which includes helping someone end their own life, in this case for the sake of possibly saving his son. That being said, I love a character-driven moment like this, which tests a character's morality. More than most, the debate House and Wilson have really pushes their friendship in this episode. As it stands, Wilson is already more stressed than normal, having lied to the police for House. It's so intriguing to watch, seeing House continually push him through this episode. Wilson sums it up perfectly when he says,
"No, I mean, why my pad? Foreman, Cameron, and Chase's pads are just as convenient. But their association with you is involuntary. They're employees. I associate with you through choice, and any relationship that involves choice, you have to see how far you can push before it breaks."
This is easy. You ask the questions, answer them, and make tasty snacks.
Essentially, I think this episode does an incredible job of setting up the main conflict through the cold open. The son visits his father in a coma. It focuses in on the father and son's rocky relationship, while highlighting House and Wilson's incredibly toxic friendship. The answers House gives does an excellent job of fleshing him as a damaged and darker human being, while excellently carrying the 40-minute episode count. I'm aware that as a series, House has so many amazing episodes and plot points, but I do feel like this one deserves more love. I know it's not as action-packed, comedic or tense as other episodes, but I think it succeeds at being a well-constructed character piece. I would love to hear what you all think in comments down below. Stay close as I post new content every single week.